Shadows over the throne. The faint clang of iron disturbed the heavy silence of the palace dungeons, reverberating against cold stone walls slick with damp. Ashur-nadin, heir to the throne, sat shackled but steadfast beneath the flicker of oil lamps. His eyes, dark and sharp, held a tired defiance as Enkidu-Lugal, the chief executioner and feared interrogator, approached with measured steps that echoed like a grim melody. The room's air was thick with tension, not only of wood and blood, but of unspoken threats swirling within the shadows where power was a brutal predator, always hungry and unforgiving. Enkidu-Lugal's presence dominated the room without need for words. His cold gaze cut through the gloom, appraising Ashur-nadin like a smith judging metal for flaws. The executioner's methods were ruthless but calculated. Instruments of pain wielded to extract the truth, locked behind the prince's clenched lips and the fortress of his silence. Yet, it was not only brute force at play. Beneath the surface lay a dangerous game of manipulation, where fear was but one thread in the tapestry binding captive and captor alike. Far above, hidden beneath layers of silk and shadow, Nin-sun-tama moved like a whisper through the palace's labyrinthine corridors, chambermaid by title, confidant by necessity. She carried secrets heavier than the caskets of kings. Her glance towards Ashur-nadin was brief but potent, a silent vow between conspirators wrapped in the fragile guise of servitude. Her whispers, soft as the rustling of linen, wove the first delicate filaments of rebellion in the heart of the fortress, where loyalty was a currency more volatile than precious metals. Meanwhile, in the vaulted chapel that overlooked the throne room's cold grandeur, Bishop Zima-Eli stood like a dark sentinel. His face, carved from years of austerity and faith, betrayed nothing but held everything. The weight of divine judgment and earthly scheming intertwined in his clasped hands. To the court, he was a moral arbiter. Yet, behind the flicker of candlelight and prayer was a power broker, swayed less by heaven and more by the shifting alliances and whispered promises that defined the city's fragile balance. Ashur-nadin's captivity was no ordinary imprisonment but a crucible, where every word, every tremor of the body, was scrutinized under the ruthless eye of Enkidu-Lugal's inquisition. The prince's recent entanglement with Ishtar-Idin, a noblewoman steeped in shadows of betrayal and passion, had ignited suspicion that threatened to swallow the fate of the throne. Their liaison, whispered throughout corridors and taverns alike, was fuel for venomous tongues as much as for the ambitions of those like Shulgi-Matum, the royal advisor, who spun court intrigues like a spider weaving a lethal web. Shulgi-Matum's smile was a crescent of cunning beneath his powdered beard, his words honeyed and barbed as they slipped between shadows in the council chamber. His scheming was a delicate art, planting doubts among allies, fostering rivalries to disguise his true aims. To him, Ashur-nadin's fall would secure power not for the throne, but for the strings he pulled invisibly behind the gilded scenes, each knot tightening the noose around both prince and palace alike. Amid these treacheries, the figure of Adad-Gamil, captain of the guards, loomed, a monument of brutal authority and silent violence. His every order resounded with the gravity of a hammer striking an anvil. Loyalty to the crown was tempered with a ruthless resolve to eradicate dissent, tasked with maintaining order in a court teetering on the brink of chaos. Adad-Gamil treated power as a weapon first, mercy a forgotten echo. His cold eyes measured every shadow, The slightest misstep could invite the sharp end of his uncompromising justice. In the dim flicker of torchlight, the interrogation unfolded with grisly precision, and Enkidu Lugal's relentless questioning pierced the prince's calm exterior, probing not only for truth, but for cracks in loyalty that might shatter his resolve. Each pause in speech was a battlefield, each hesitation a potential surrender, or a trap laid with cruel subtlety. Ashur-nadin's silence was a defiant proclamation, a clenched fist against the dark forces seeking to break him. Yet, within that refusal, a storm of fear and doubt churned, hidden beneath a mask forged by years of expectation and bloodline. Ninsun Tama's whispered counsel reached his cell through the faintest glimmer of opportunity, a conduit between captive and conspirator. Her words, a balm and a blade. She knew the dangers of such confidences. A single, overheard phrase could spell doom for both. And yet, the necessity of alliance in a world ruled by suspicion made secrecy the only currency of hope. Her loyalty was ambiguous, painted by shades of personal ambition and genuine affection twisted together like the ancient braids she wore beneath her modest veil. Meanwhile, Bishop Zima-Eli's solemn sermons within the sacred heart of the city echoed the complex dance of faith and power. His presence was both comfort and judgment, a reminder that divine sanction was both shield and sword in the endless contest for control. Yet, even he was not immune to the shifting alliances. His decisions weighed carefully the fragile truce between righteousness and political calculation, where salvation was often the reward of those who manipulated beliefs as skillfully as men wielded swords. In the quietude of his chambers, Shulgi-Matam plotted with quiet malice, piecing together rumors and half-truths into an insidious narrative to undermine the heir. His mind was a forge where suspicion became weaponized, his schemes written in the gaps between whispered conversations and clandestine meetings. Driven by a hunger not for the crown but for influence, his patience was a coiled spring, the moment to strike, drawing nearer with each carefully placed word and subtle betrayal. The tension layered thick within the palace walls as Adad Gamil enforced order through fear and discipline, his brutal efficiency a counterpoint to the intricate webs woven above. The guards under his command were extensions of his will, each a sentinel forged in the fires of loyalty and dread. The prince's fate hung precariously between the caprices of these forces. Mercy was absent, replaced instead by the cold calculus of survival, in a world where blood and betrayal were inseparable. As the night deepened, the trapped heir's gaze met Enkidu Lugal's once more, a silent conversation of resolve and threat. Outside, the whispers of Ninsun Tama merged with the distant prayers of Bishop Zima-Eli. Inside, Shulgi-Matam's plans took root. The palace, a living beast of stone and shadow, throbbed with the pulse of intrigue, its corridors a crucible where destinies would be forged and shattered alike. With every breath, every stolen glance, the dance of power spiraled onward, a storm gathering unseen beyond the brittle calm, ready to shatter the delicate equilibrium of empire. The world beyond the dungeon's cold confines waited silently as Ashur-nadin's ordeal continued, a crucible of mind and body, where loyalty and survival intertwined beneath the heavy gaze of men who measured worth in whispers and executions. The struggle for the throne was no longer a distant rumor. It was a living, breathing force, choking the city in its relentless grip, promising that when dawn broke, nothing would remain as it was before. Veils of deceit. Ashur-nadin stood in the shadowed corridor, the cold stone walls pressing close as if conspiring against him. The distant clang of metal echoed, a sound he had come to dread, a herald of torment administered under Enkidu-Lugal's relentless gaze. The chief executioner's reputation for merciless interrogations preceded him. Yet Ashur-nadin knew the true cruelty was not merely physical, but born of fractured trust and whispered betrayals. Within the palace walls, loyalty proved a brittle shield, and the air's every breath invited suspicion. In the dim light, Ninsun-Tama moved silently, her presence a ghostly comfort amid shifting allegiances. The chambermaid's soft utterances carried secrets as potent as any blade, her whispered confidences threading between Ashur-nadin and Shulgi-Matam, the royal adviser whose cunning web of court intrigues tightened with every passing day. Shulgi-Matam's eyes, sharp with calculation, studied the air with veiled interest, his schemes unfurling behind carefully chosen smiles. Yet, even he was cautious. The dance of power in this ancient citadel left no quarter for recklessness. Ishtar-Idin's shadow lingered at the edge of Ashur-nadin's path, her aristocratic beauty a mask for ambitions tangled in desire and deceit. Her duplicities risked unraveling fragile alliances, the whispers of her indiscretion sowing seeds of scandal poised to explode. The noblewoman's voice, laced with equal parts of seduction and menace, threatened a pyre of ruin. Ashur-nadin could not afford distraction. Every temptation was a step closer to downfall, every glance a potential dagger's edge. Adad Gamil, the guard captain, embodied brute force and cold authority. His relentless enforcement of order quelled rebellions before words could spark them, his presence a grinding weight that subdued even the boldest dissent. Yet, beneath his rigid discipline simmered a keen understanding of fragile power balances. He shifted alliances as deftly as a desert breeze altered the dunes. His loyalty, bought by blood and fear, was a force Ashur-nadin respected as much as he feared. In the chamber of Zima-Eli, the bishop meditated upon the precarious moral fabric binding the realm. His counsel was sought whenever doubt corrupted the sovereign's judgment, and his voice swayed courts with a measure of divine gravity. Zima-Eli's judgments shaped destinies, his role as power broker entwined with that of spiritual arbiter. To him, the palace was not merely a seat of governance, but a crucible where sin and sanctity clashed beneath veils of solemn ritual and forbidden truths. Tonight, the tension was palpable. Corridors hummed with secret meetings and stolen glances. Enkidu-Lugal had extracted another confession, a noble's blood staining the stone floors, a reminder of the stakes entwined with every conspirator's breath. Ashur-nadin's heart weighed heavy with the knowledge that kinship was no safeguard from suspicion. Rumors of treason threaded through whispered prayers, and every ally's allegiance was tinged with uncertainty. Shulgi-Matam's plans unfolded with patient cruelty. He manipulated court servants and nobles alike, twisting ambitions into weapons against each other. The adviser had uncovered a plot born not solely of politics, but bred in the dark, tangled corridors of passion and revenge. Ishtar-Idin was both his tool and his target. Her entanglements with men of power made her a volatile note in his symphony of intrigue. The palace was a stage where each gesture held double meaning, and trust was currency too costly to spend freely. In a hushed chamber, Ninsun Tama conveyed a silent warning to Ashur-nadin, her eyes flickering with urgency behind measured calm. "Beware the serpent that wears silk," she intoned, voice barely a breath. Weaving counsel meant not just to guide, but to shield. Her loyalty was a fragile thread, stretched taut over tempestuous seas of conspiracy. Her insight was earned through shadows lived and secrets kept, an invaluable harbor in a storm of betrayal. Ashur-nadin wrestled with doubt as he navigated this lethal labyrinth. Each decision risked igniting chaos. The weight of his crown was a crucible burning away certainty. The presence of Adad Gamil was constant, a grim reminder that defiance invited swift reprisal. The guard captain's tempered brutality was the sword that upheld order, yet its edge was indiscriminate and unforgiving. To wield power was to embrace peril, and Ashur-nadin felt the chill of that eternal bargain. Behind closed doors, Zimmeili debated the ethics of punishment and mercy, his fingers tracing the ancient texts as if searching for answers written beneath dust and time. His role demanded impartiality, yet he was keenly aware of the personal stakes concealed beneath doctrine. Power and piety intertwined in complex patterns. Judgment could save a realm or doom its people. In the bishop's measured gaze lay the silent weight of countless lives balanced on fragile decrees. Within the palace's labyrinthine heart, new alliances forged in whispered negotiations. Betrayals germinated like poison beneath polished facades. The fragile network of trust splintered under pressure as Ishtar-Idin's secret liaisons were uncovered, threatening to expose fissures too dangerous to reveal openly. Her bargains with rival factions stirred unrest. Desire became a weapon sharper than any sword, wielded in the delicate war of shadows. Ashur-nadin confronted Enkidu Lugal under the cold glare of torches flickering against stone. The executioner's voice was low and chilling. Confessions extracted, not just in pain, but in silence, where words twisted into accusation and fear bred compliance. The heir perceived that beyond physical torment lay psychological warfare. Each whispered doubt, each insinuation was a blade aiming to dismantle will and allegiance alike. The palace was not merely a home but a battlefield of minds. Ninsun Tama's quiet courage provided Ashur-nadin a slender lifeline amid encroaching darkness. Her whispers carried coded warnings and fragments of truth others dared not utter. The chambermaid's knowledge of hidden passages and overheard conversations was a map through deceit. Yet even she was ensnared in webs woven by Shulgi-Matum, whose voracious appetite for control consumed trust and loyalty with equal hunger. Adad Gamil's relentless patrols carved out spheres of cold order, his presence a living testament to the price of rebellion suppressed before it bloomed. The guard captain's loyalty, tempered by pragmatism more than affection, made him an unpredictable force in the court's shifting landscape. Ashur-nadin understood that to survive was to navigate between submission and defiance, to balance on a knife's edge where one misstep meant downfall. Ishtar-Idin's ambitions simmered beneath polished smiles and perfumed whispers. Her entanglements with courtiers threatened not only her reputation, but the very fabric of power that Ashur-nadin sought to uphold. Betrayal was no abstract concept, but a living pulse in every exchanged glance and sealed note. The noblewoman's desires were combustible elements mixed with political tinder, ready to ignite. Zimmeili's voice echoed in clandestine councils, a steady force amid chaos. His judgments weighed not only on politics, but on the souls of those who ruled and those who served. The bishop's moral authority was an undercurrent, shaping events quietly but irrevocably. His decisions rippled through the palace, touching lives with invisible hands, reminding all that divine will was a powerful instrument in human affairs. As night deepened, Ashur-nadin found himself ensnared in a web, where every ally might be a traitor and every promise a lie. The cold calculation of Shulgi-Matum, the brutal enforcement by Adad-Gamil, the whispered warnings of Ninsun-Tama, and the dangerous allure of Ishtar-Eddin all converged into a storm that threatened to consume the fragile peace. Faces once familiar turned inscrutable, and the heir's world narrowed to a perilous chessboard where each move bore mortal consequences. Amid the gathering darkness, the heir's resolve hardened. He knew the path forward was shrouded in shadows darker than stone corridors, where loyalty was tested by fire, and every breath could be the last spoken in trust. The quiet menace of Enkidu Lugal's gaze lingered, a reminder that power could be extracted through pain, both physical and unseen. With every step, Ashur-nadin embraced the inevitable cost of dominion. The palace breathed with whispered fears and unspoken threats, the silence between corridors loud with anticipation. Each character held their own secret burdens. Ishtar-Idin's tangled desires, Shulgi-Matum's relentless scheming, Zima-Eli's moral balancing, Adad-Gamil's cold command, and the fragile hope borne silently by Ninsun-Tama. Their fates intertwined in a tapestry threaded with fear and ambition, where the true cost of power unveiled itself gradually through pain and perseverance. Ashur-nadin's gaze met that of Ninsun-Tama's once more, a wordless exchange charged with unspoken promises and dangers. The heir knew that beyond the palace walls awaited forces eager to exploit each fracture within. Yet, within this chamber of veiled threats, the only certainty was that the struggle for survival had become an unending trial, one that demanded vigilance, cunning, and the willingness to endure wounds no eye could see. As dawn edged closer, the shadow of another night's trials fell away yet lingered like a stain. New plots whispered behind silken curtains, alliances crept into new forms, and the balance of power teetered precariously between ruin and salvation. Ashur-nadin turned from the chamber, resolute to confront what lay ahead with the cold fire of survival, burning fierce within him, knowing the true battle had only just begun. The weight of silence. Ashur-nadin lingered in the dim chamber where shadows clung to stone like whispered threats, his eyes, heavy with the sleepless nights, fixed on the faint flicker of oil lamps that barely held back the blackness. The silence was a weight pressing down, thicker than the stifling air that smelled faintly of burnt resin and endured fear. Every distant footstep, every muffled breath echoed like a reckoning. Behind him, the stone walls had witnessed promises broken and blood spilled, yet the present still held a chill deeper than any winter frost. Here, the air itself seemed charged with the disquiet of secrets unspoken and futures unraveling. Ninsun-Tama's voice came gently, a soft murmur against the oppressive quiet. Her presence was a fragile thread in the midst of the turmoil, yet her words bore a strange mixture of comfort and hidden peril. "He waits beyond the threshold," she whispered, "and with him your fate." The chambermaid's eyes glistened, reflecting not hope but the sharp edge of truth that cut through pretense. Ashur-nadin's jaw tightened. The choice before him had been forged in endless nights of counsel and betrayal. whispers too dangerous to be allowed full voice. Each moment carried the weight of lives folded into the relentless gears of power, jealousy, and desperation. From the shadows emerged Enkidu Lugal, the chief executioner, his face an unyielding mask without mercy or remorse. His step was deliberate, a cruel echo of inevitability. His hands, calloused and stained with the memory of countless torments, rested lightly at his sides, as if to warn the prince of the growing storm. His eyes held no warmth, only the steel clarity of duty twisted by ambition. The executioner's role was more than mere instrument of death. He was the dark hand that shaped the kingdom's fragile order. Where others sought to rule by decree or prayer, he ruled through fear carved deep into the bones of men. Opposite stood Shulgimatum, the royal advisor, whose measured expression betrayed the wheels turning relentlessly beneath calm words. His mind was a calculating web, ensnaring allies and enemies alike with equal precision. The tense lines around his mouth spoke of hidden plots and shifting loyalties. He was a man who danced with shadows and carved destinies as easily as any sword. "The bishop's judgment will tip the scales," he said quietly, "but his mercy is as elusive as the desert wind." His voice held the cool detachment of a man who governed through manipulation, aware that power was a blade that could cut both foe and friend. Ishtar-Idin's presence hovered just beyond the doorway, her posture a mixture of defiance and entrapment. The noblewoman's gaze slid over the room in fragments, her conflicted heart a crucible of desire and betrayal. Her choices had fractured the fragile equilibrium, her secret liaisons threatening everything with silent ruin. The flicker of candlelight caught the edge of her jeweled collar, an emblem of status and prison alike. She knew well the dangers woven in courtly love and political ambition. Each whispered promise held the potential for destruction. Her silence spoke volumes. A lethal tension coiled beneath the surface like a serpent awaiting its moment. In the dark corridor, the heavy tread of Adad Gamil approached. The guard captain's presence was a tangible weight, a reminder of brutal authority, standing sentinel over fragile peace. His eyes, cold and unyielding, scanned the chamber, as if measuring fault lines invisible to others. He lived by the law of control and submission, a man hardened by years of wielding power through muscle and intimidation. Each command from his lips was final, a decree stamped with the inevitability of iron and blood. His loyalty was fiercely claimed by the throne, yet even he stood uneasy beneath the vaulted ceilings of intrigue threading the palace like poison. Bishop Zima-Eli arrived silently, his robe whispering on the cold stone floor. The man carried the heavy mantle of spiritual arbiter, a figure whose word bent the will of princes and commoners alike. His eyes betrayed a complex tangle of conviction, guarded doubt, and calculated resolve. The bishop's role in this clandestine theater was pivotal. His verdict would shape the kingdom's future, riding the fragile boundary between divine mandate and mortal compromise. In his presence, Ashur-Nadin felt the crushing weight of expectation, a crossroads where faith and power clashed beneath the solemn gaze of God and man. The confrontation unfolded with little ceremony. Ashur-Nadin's voice broke the silence, steady despite the tumult within. "I claim what blood and oath bind to me," he said, each word a declaration sharpened by loss and hardened resolve. Enkidu Lugal's gaze held an unreadable challenge. Decades of darkness and cruelty could not be dismissed by mere royal claim. "Then prove your right, prince, for no crown is held without suffering." The executioner's grim smile was a blade unsheathed, a reminder that power exacted a price beyond coin or counsel. Ninsantama's whisper cut through the tension. "He will test you, Ashur-nadin. Blood answers blood." Her certainty was a shadow, cast between comfort and foreshadowing, the fragile light in a night thick with dread. The chambermaid's loyalty was a silent rebellion against the encroaching doom, a fragile comfort in the cold calculus of survival. Her presence embodied the human kernel beneath the ruthless politics, a reminder that even stone and steel yielded to whispered trust. Outside the chamber, the murmur of the court shifted like restless tides. Shulgi Matam's plans rippled beneath every interaction. Alliances strained by suspicion, loyalty bartered for advantage. The dance of power was precise and merciless, where every glance hit a dagger and every word was a thread in the web of control. Ishtar-Idin's conflicted heart pulsed with dangerous potential, her forbidden meetings threading new dangers through the already fragile weave of truth and deception. Adad-Gamil's return to the antechamber was marked by a soldier's grim efficiency. He stood as both shield and sword, his resolve unbending, even as the palace walls seemed to close tighter around all inside. His loyalty was unwavering, yet even he bore the burden of knowing that control was never absolute. Fear could breed rebellion, and silence often hid the sharpest treasons. Zimaeli's verdict, unspoken but palpable, hung in the air like a blade poised to strike. The bishop weighed the signs and portents with austere gravity, deciding not merely the fate of Ashur-nadin, but the soul of a fracturing kingdom. His internal struggle revealed a man torn between ideals and survival, doctrine and the inescapable messiness of politics. In his silence, he shaped destinies with the cold logic of judgment, a godly hand smoothing or snapping the brittle threads binding rulers to subjects. As the night deepened, Ashur-nadin's world narrowed to this crucible of moments. The echoes of betrayal, the flickers of desire, the chill of violence, all condensed into a singular point of irreversible change. The throne before him was more than stone and gold. It was the altar where human frailty and iron will collided, where silence bore the weight of legacies yet written in blood and whispered secrets. The chamber fell into a heavy stillness as fate tiptoed toward its verdict. Ashur-nadin's breath caught between hope and dread, his heart a tight fist against the shadowed past. The next step had to be taken with unwavering truth, for the kingdom waited, fractured, fragile, poised on the edge of despair and renewal. The night's cold breath seeped through the cracks, carrying whispers of storms yet to rise beyond these ancient walls,